Anyway, all three of these movements that you will hear are courtesy of singer-songwriter Carrie Newcomer. She is a marvelous artist who, if you do not know, I suggest that you search out. Google, Alexa, or YouTube can help you find her. And I guess that's where the story starts. Our friend, Alexa. When my son's partner and her son moved into the parsonage, so did Alexa. For those of you who don't know of what I speak, Alexa is like a Siri that came out on Apple phones years ago, but she can be on your smart TV, in your car's navigation system, or can sit like a little speaker anywhere in your house, just waiting to be activated by your voice. She can play music, answer questions, place phone calls, fill your calendar, send texts, compile grocery lists, and even order your groceries or other items. She is kind of like a mini personal assistant. And one of her access points in our house is in the main bathroom, which we all share. For those of you that don't know the parsonage, it's 1.5 baths. So if I need to shower, we're in the main bath. It's been exciting with 7 people in the house. When she moved in, at first I gave her no regard. Then, as I was trying to stay abreast of national and world events without getting overloaded, I started using her to listen to NPR Now music, News Now, version of the daily news, which only hits on the most important things, and as Bill would say, doesn't get political. It just kind of stays and gives us information, and in 10 minutes I can gather it. As my surgery loomed, though, world and national news became less and less relevant, and I substituted the news for some music. But unlike the radio, where you just turn the dial and find something you like, with Alexa, you have to be specific. You have to say what you want to hear. So what did I want to hear? What was going to help me? And so I thought to myself, yes, I'm going to play some Carrie Newcomer. Thus I said, Alexa, please play Carrie Newcomer. And even though she always told me, shuffling the music of Carrie Newcomer, almost always pre-surgery, she played this. Yeah, I will acknowledge that I was terrified about what I was about to go through. Death I was not afraid of, but the many other challenges and potential complications of open heart surgery, I sure was. While I believe that God is with us in all things, I do not believe that there is any way to earn merit. Nor do I believe that God cherry-picks those who are healed any more than I think God condemns those that suffer. Are there miracle healings? Maybe. But they're extraordinarily rare and not something that anyone can plan on, nor can they earn it. My prayer to God was for the care of my family, to give the surgeons wisdom and to offer me kind nurses. I prayed that God would be with me and that you all would be in good hands. This hard thing that I was facing sent shivers through me, as I think many of you observed. Carrie's words brought me comfort and gave me the strength to face what was before me and face it head on. Additionally, just a few days before surgery, a colleague of mine, Reverend Karen Hodges, posted a quote by Terry Tempest Williams, and it said, "The world is holy. All life is holy. Daily prayers are delivered on the lips of breaking waves, the whispering of grasses, the shivering of leaves." And as I read it, I thought, this is it. This is how God is and how God can help me in this time. God, through Karen and her quote, reminded me that I was not alone and reminded me to open my eyes and my heart to look for the holy, just the same way I assigned it to you. I was reminded to be aware that there were angels in our midst at all times, not Gabriel-type angels, but angels in the hearts and hands of everyday human beings. I was reminded that God's presence is not only manifest in human beings, But like the waves and the grasses and the leaves, I could find the sacred in all things, in my sheets, in the food I was fed, and yes, even in the needles they stuck me with. Now I'm here to report that this has helped me tremendously. I entered each encounter with as glad a heart as I could muster. I got to know almost all of my nurses, and despite the pain and difficulty, I have to say the entire experience was amazingly holy. And before you say, well, of course, for you, but for me, I want to acknowledge that many of you who I have visited in hospitals and sat with during really difficult times have actually been the ones to teach me this lesson. And whether you realize it or not, and I'm going to cry, I apologize, many of you spoke to me in my mind as I was going through this. Your strength gave me strength that I could do this hard thing. And also, in fairness, I will confess to you that my second hospitalization that I had during my absence from you, at a time when I was having chest pain and thought I was having a heart attack, but which ended up being a gallbladder attack, I was not able to muster such grace. I would even say perhaps I was downright grumpy. One poor doctor who came to talk to me after a particularly frustrating time when many doctors were offering conflicting statements and my breathing was getting worse and worse, dared to call me Miss. And I will admit and confess that I was uncharacteristically responded to them, maybe not with much grace. Well, it would be Mrs. if you want to get specific. And in actuality, it's Reverend, thank you. Now, I have to say also that it took him aback, and he turned around and got a chair and sat and talked with me like a human being. So maybe it wasn't all bad. But that to say that we all do the best we can given the circumstances that we are in and rely on a lot of grace and forgiveness for the rest. And this brings me to my second movement. Let's listen. Now, for me, this second movement has two strong lines with a third cut in. That is, my sanctuary was made up of God and George, and I must acknowledge our eldest child, Kai, who did everything they could, including taking time off to come up and be with me and fight with insurance companies. So they get an extra bonus for that. This song, Post-Surgery, took first place in Alexa's supposed shuffling technique. And the words you just heard reverberated through me each time as I sat in the shower chair and had my husband bathe me, because I couldn't do that for myself. I can tell you there were many days in those first few weeks that there were more tears than there were droplets of water coming from that shower head. Recovery from a surgery like this leaves one, or at least I should say that it left me, feeling vulnerable and thankful and uncomfortable with excellent care that I was receiving from God and my family and things that you all sent positive notes. Sanctuary, as I understand it, is a place where we can be utterly and completely at rest in the care and protection of others, specifically in God's hands. It is that place where we are safe. This, as you can imagine, and might struggle with yourself, is not a natural position for me. I, for one, like being in charge. I like to know what's going on and what is coming up, and to let that go is terrifying. Deb can attest to that. Your moderator needs angel wings. But that is what faith is, to let go and to not know. That is what it looks like to live into those ever-repeated words in the Bible, do not fear, for I am with you. In fact, this is what we mean when we talk about healing, because healing isn't necessarily about getting better. Healing is about becoming whole again. That, in fact, is the meaning of the word shalom. It is said, and we must hold on to the fact that whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's. God is our sanctuary in this life and in the next. Last week when we were in Maine and I was reading a story in the Bible from 1 Chronicles chapter 21, I was reminded of this internal struggle between self-sufficiency and faith. It says that El-Satan incited King David to count the people of Israel. Now this may not seem so terrible, but what does such a count imply? Even Joab saw the problem with this act. To know our reserves is to count on our action, to depend on ourselves, and to discount God's ability to make something out of nothing. In my case, without the cooperative hands of many people, without God's grace, and honestly, without the unmerited blessing and privilege of being born in an industrialized country and having health insurance, even though you have to fight with them, my odds would not have been pretty. People with severe aortic stenosis, which was my diagnosis, have a 50% mortality rate within 2 years of their first event and 80% within 5. And there's no real way to improve the situation without surgery. There is also not a whole lot you can do to prevent these symptoms. And in my case, a large part of the cause, they learned, has to do with a birth defect found 51 years after the fact. My aortic valve has 2 petals versus your all, God willing, 3-petal aortic valve. And so oddly, my passing out here in the pulpit on Christmas Eve was a blessing. It forced me to move forward with testing because I didn't have the other symptoms. And I didn't realize that some of the symptoms I was having was that because I had always lived with them. So I am thankful for God's intervention in that moment and many of your persistences. Learning to rely on others and that none of us are meant to do it alone was a huge part of the second movement of my summer. And thus the third movement, which is kind of where I am now, I am reminded that trouble and tragedy are an inevitable part of life. But, and I mean a huge but, we don't need to wallow here. This doesn't mean that we don't have the right to be angry. It doesn't mean we don't have the right to be mad. It doesn't mean that we don't have the right to be hurt or, frankly, snuggle under our blanket for a few days and just sob. We must go through this process to heal. And as we feel stronger, we can begin to lean into the light. So here's the third movement. And so I'm back. From a cardiac perspective, things are going great. I no longer have the heart murmur I've had my whole life. My mechanical valve is working well. Most days I don't even recognize that my heart is in my body, except when I'm really quiet and I can hear tick, 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 the click of my mechanical valve. Because of the gallbladder, I still have some difficult days and I'm waiting another surgery, but God willing, that will be done on an outpatient basis and the healing is relatively quick. I am ever so thankful for life, and I'm thankful that after almost 11 weeks, I can finally pick up my grandbabies who turned 1 yesterday. It was an awesome birthday present for me and for them. And I'm reminded to lean into the goodness, to not let the darkness, the worries, the fears overtake me, but to lean in to what is life-giving. In the book of John, we are told that the light was coming, a light that would enlighten everyone, a light that would care for us and teach us. And we hear from Jesus himself that he is the light of the world and that whoever follows him will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And so that's where I am now. We'll see what Alexa declares the next movement to be, but interestingly, I will tell you that it seems that she actually started shuffling the music as she proclaimed she's been doing all along. A shuffle like a shuffle that you and I would describe as a shuffle, not the same song repeated day after day. Maybe now I get some new songs by Carrie Newcomer. So where and how did I see the tremendous and wondrous handprint of God in my life? We could be here for hours, but I'm not going to do that to you. But as succinctly as I can put it, I found the awesome wonder of God in the strength that I was offered to get through this hard thing, in the support of people like you all who created my sanctuary, and in the light that has finally become visible again, and which I attempt to lean into every day. And so I thank each and every one of you for your prayers, your cards, your willingness to get up and step up and get things done around here. By the way, isn't her paint job beautiful? Yes. So, amen.